You know, sometimes I wake up in the morning, look over my collection of PlayStation 1 games and think to myself, man, there just aren't enough dead kids here. I've tried everything, looking for skeevy guys at yard sales, looking for a white guy in the woods, even looking for a few live specimens myself, nothing. Well, as it seems like I can't do this alone, I think I'll head over to the internet to find a tutorial or something. Petscop is the perfect game for anybody, whether you're into floating extremities or long abandoned game franchises. It's the culmination of your traditional creepypasta with a tinge of PlayStation, taking the form of a YouTube Let's Play series, and oh boys, there are a lot to unpack here. Petscop is presented as a real PlayStation 1 game, a lost relic if you will, narrated by who we assume to be Paul Leskowitz. The first upload to the Petscop channel will have you believe that the game is the focal point, and while that's true to some extent, the real meat and potatoes lies in the elaborate and much darker story. The Petscop video game is less of a, well, video game, rather a tool to create suspension of disbelief. Okay, let me give you an example here, Ben Drowned. It's an infamous creepypasta featuring Majora's Mask that attempts to become gradually more creepy as the pasta goes along. Yeah, if I stretched the word creepy out any further, I'd mess up the aspect ratio, damn it. You can throw all sorts of scary at someone without much of a reaction, but convert something they're fond of into a spooky story. Now there's where you'll find someone with the piss and shit scared out of them, that's how you know you're going viral. Petscop doesn't have that luxury though, and has to fool you into thinking that it really exists initially to make an impression when things are wacky. And it does that through a little thing I like to call good writing. Yeah, most creepypastas suck big time, and the only other decent one I can think of off the top of my head is the original Slender. Yeah, wouldn't you know, before it was turned into a fairly mediocre indie budget game, a higher budget yet disappointing sequel. Oh god! It was actually a decent short story that kept things ambiguous and spooky. Perfect on its own, but hey, who could go without some oversaturation on the side? Anyways, back to Petscop. I say good writing is an all-encompassing term to describe the storytelling, themes, and presentation of Petscop. Just look at the footage I'm showing you. Tell me it doesn't remind you of Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey 98, damn it. It's up in the air whether Petscop is really an animation, a Unity game with a filter slapped over it, or a legitimate PlayStation game built from the ground up. But all the necessary details are here to convince you that it's real. Not just the composite video filter, but hardware limitations represented by low quality sprites and textures, the limitation of one light source on screen at one time, and even the name of corrupted save files are all what you'd legitimately find on a console. Either this is all a ruse, or this is some dedicated homebrew. But you can't have a creepypasta video series without a creepy series of videos, and by God, Petscop delivers. Firstly, Jesus! Now this is where most people would appropriately ask, what the f am I looking at? The Petscop fan community, being a fan community, said, well, it's not Paul. Really? Yeah, you know you got it tough when your name's after the process of elimination. To be fair, it's to the point. And the official name is Guardian. Yep, I'll stick to the one that takes less time to type out, thanks. Some might argue that the contraction null also comes from New Maker and Pool. New Maker referring to the spookier hidden portion of the game known as the New Maker plane, with some fans even referring to the character as just New Maker. This character design is perfect, and by that I mean it embodies everything your game mascot shouldn't be. The glazed pinpoint eyes, the vomit green skin tone, the brown attire, it's all here. It's off-putting, the proportions are unnatural, and those feet are one way to get onto someone's DeviantArt page. He's totally out of place in Petscop, at least compared with the rest of the pets. They're colourful and match the environment they're in. Null doesn't. He's oddly placed and doesn't look like he should be there, which just adds to the creepy atmosphere. Also the title, Petscop, has given me the heebie-jeebies already, zoinks and yikes. Yeah, nobody's for sure what Petscop means or where it came from. I've personally come up with two possible origins by splitting the name into two, Pet and Scop, with Pet meaning and Scop probably relating to scope, as in to scope out to watch, or referring to scopophobia, the fear of being watched. Yeah, it's nothing fancy and there isn't an overarching theme of being watched as far as I'm concerned, but hey, who said these theories had to make sense, right? Just watch any theory-centric YouTube channel, you'll understand. Alright, now we got that out of the way, let's go a little deeper into Petscop. This isn't a theory video, instead I want to get a certain thing I like to call meta. I want to talk about the behind the scenes, what makes it scary, what makes it tick, what makes it so unique and compelling to watch, and what makes it a good series? Well, for one, it's believable. I mentioned Slender Man before and how it originated as a cleverly written tale, but any ounce of fear has been killed through this, and this, for me at least, so there goes that. Ben Drowned is dumb. Yeah, it paved the way for video game creepypastas, but video game creepypastas suck. With some exceptions. Ben Drowned is okay at best and just badly written at worst. Also, it's filled with these things. Ew, gross, get them out of here. It was just a creepypasta first, then somebody made a shitty ROM hack to a company. Hey, same with this one, and this one, and this one! Yeah, I'm sensing a theme here. This is the right time to ask, well, isn't Petscop the same thing? And to that I say, is the PS4 Slim a good investment? These creepypastas are a hey, wouldn't this be spooky scenario first, with a story to go along with the concept, whereas Petscop is a fleshed out behemoth of a story first, under the guise of a 90s puzzle game. And Petscop uses the concept of an old video game as a vehicle, intertwining plot elements, clues, and references into every corner of the game. Some of the connections made and tidbits discovered through links between the quote-unquote overworld and the quote-unquote underworld of Petscop are trivial to say the least. More on that later. Oh boy, looks like it's that time again. Video games, am I right? Nothing goes hand in hand with video games than a few levels, so I welcome you to my annual Count Those Levels countdown. The only countdown where we count down the number of levels in video games and simultaneously fund the eradication of polio. There's nothing like a good charitable deed to accommodate a lack of dignity. Today we're looking at Petscop. Let's count those levels. Level 1, even care. Shit, that's it. Yeah, in addition to being lost to the ages, Petscop was also unfinished, who knew? Personally, if I was directing a project like this, I'd include a few more dummy levels to add to the realism. I understand why Petscop only has even care, as the game is canonically unfinished, and canonically presented this way, intentionally or unintentionally, for somebody to find. Almost like it was initially being developed with pure intent before, you know, this. Speaking of, gross and weird, this is Marvin. Many theories have sprung up regarding what his deal is, but most people can agree that he probably kidnapped kids at some point possibly. But I hear you say, I thought this wasn't a theory video, and to that I say, yeah, I pulled an EA and lied, sue me. This is an observation made by artist Fulvus Fox. He has helped out in a lot of past and future projects of mine in terms of artwork, so follow him on Twitter or something. His idea was that Marvin's face is a security footage frame cutout, and upon hearing this, I was intrigued. It will make the green shapeless mask make a whole lot more sense than it being a tangible thing or creature. The idea that the weird textures and shapes in Marvin's face being seemingly nothing other than indiscernible features turn out to be a distorted, low-quality snapshot of maybe a crime or kidnapping, possibly performed by Marvin himself, would make a whole lot of sense. Currently people still have no f***ing clue what he is otherwise, though popular theories include this thing, cat, and that's about it. But that's what makes Marvin's character design great. The fact that even after 2 years of Petscop, nobody has a true idea of what or who he really is, adds to the mystery. And the game doesn't even acknowledge this either, which makes it all the more creepy. Marvin is treated as just another player, made further evident by the fact that he shares Null's body. That's another thing about this game too. There are demo recordings of other players in this series. There's the idea floating around that each player looks different to another. For example, when Paul is playing Petscop, he's playing as default Null, while the other players, or representations of those players, such as Belle, Care, or Marvin, other key characters in the series, have swapped out heads, from Paul's perspective at least. It all depends on the player's point of view. For example, if it was Belle that we're watching a recording of, her player sprite would also be the default Null, with the other players having swapped heads, including Paul. It's complicated and a fleshed out fan theory at best, so I'll move on. Oh man, I just broke my own rule. I wasn't going to talk about anything theory related. I suppose you'd call that unpredictable. Unpredictability is another factor that contributes to Petscop's atmosphere. God, I'm smooth. Yeah, if there's one thing that I'll get down on my knees for, it's a scary piece of media that doesn't rely on jump scares, but shakes things up so you're never truly certain if you're about to get Petscoped or not. That's one thing that Petscop gets right though, it's never relied on cheap jump scares, and I definitely appreciate it for that. It's such an overused trope that just pulls me out of the experience. Of course, jump scares can be utilised to totally catch you off guard, and there are definitely good examples out there. But more often than not, it's an easy way to provoke the player. That's not to say Petscop doesn't have its moments though. For example, in Petscop 11, Marvin jumps into the frame and the room flashes. Not a jump scare per se, but definitely intended to make you go, oh shit. Yeah. There are other moments like this in the series, and honestly, I think it's great. Nothing too spooky, but it always keeps you on the edge of your seat. I want to touch up on the New Maker plane too, where most of the series takes place. It's incredibly expansive, at least from what we've seen. It's arguably what Petscop in-universe was being made for all along, and houses only the best reaction to the deceased.
That's a dead kid.
Through the series, we follow Paul and Co through the New Maker plane, and it's never intended to feel intensely scary, but still leaves you feeling uneasy at the end of it all. It's where things really start getting funky, and Petscop is filled to the brim with just weird shit. Without context or deeper knowledge of the story, it's hard to unravel this series, though some recurring themes make things easier to perceive. For example, the concept of rebirth is mentioned time and time again throughout the series, with obvious references and connections regarding the theme. The New Maker plane is home to all sorts of situations that align with real-world events, at least in Petscop's backstory, and it's all kind of surreal in a way. The fact that Petscop uses the medium of a video game to its advantage really helps sell the idea that this retro world feels like a true story, something that happened years ago, and it's being retold in pieces scattered across a disc that really can't hold much information to begin with. The limitations of the PlayStation actually helped realize the concept that it'd be hard for a total retelling of a story so packed and detailed that maybe it's for the better that the console can't display it all. Petscop's backstory seeps through the cracks in specific instances, and that's what most people will take away from the series, and the backstory itself has some dark themes and racy elements, making for a unique experience. I know it's easy to say that, but the way this series handles those elements makes you feel like it's hiding something from you intentionally. It's not made easy to explain. Everything from the fact that Paul could be stuck playing Petscop against his will, Petscop itself potentially acting as a suicide note of sorts, and all the references and pointers towards child abuse all contribute to the idea that Petscop is a conglomerate of all sorts of twisted ideas and nuances forged into an overarching story. This series is undoubtedly one of a kind and nothing like I've ever seen, and comparable to the likes of Marble Hornet or Local 58 in terms of production quality and entertainment value. Seriously, if you're into this sort of thing, definitely give the series a go. I doubt you'll regret it. So that's a brief introduction to Petscop, a series centered around exploiting Sony's retaliation to Nintendo and dead infants. Yeah, the whole dead kids thing is a bit dark, but hey, there's nothing like a good funeral, and wouldn't I know it, count those levels is going nowhere.